This is a rock hard 4x4 rear bumper and tire carrier setup for your Jeep JK. Now these fit the 2007 on up to your current models produced today. A couple of features that it has is it's made of 1/4-inch steel. This makes it probably the strongest tire carrier available on the market. Not only that, is our swing design is designed off of a 1.25 inch steel shaft with tapered roller bearings. The cool thing about it is it's adjustable for your heights so that you're never lifting your tire carrier up. It makes it so that it's designed to open and close with ease, and that's what we're going to go over. Now, it has the high lift jack mount setup. It has your spare tire carrier that is adjustable up and down and in and out. And that depends on if you have an offset wheel or a stock wheel. This setup's going to work for you. Designed for tires to accommodate the factory sizes all the way up to a 38-inch tire with our racks and up to a 40 without. The other thing you'll like about it, has 1-inch D-rings that go all the way through the bumper and they're welded on each side. Has a 2-inch receiver with your mounts for your safety chains. The other thing it has is it's set up for electrical either of a 7-way, a 4-way, or a block off if you don't have the electrical on your Jeep JK. Now let me show you the operation of this rock hard 4x4 bumper and tire carrier. Easy lift handle here. You're going to open up the tire carrier. You're going to notice that right here in the center by the pivot there's a drop down pin assembly. This pin assembly is going to drop in place. What that does is this locks the tire carrier from coming back and coming into you if you're on a hill. The other thing that's nice is it keeps you from breaking your rear glass. It's designed to open far enough so that it doesn't break your rear glass if it was to come close. The other thing is this is an 1.25 inch steel shaft. You're not going to bend this carrier. This carrier is designed to carry our can mounts and rock rack also. Today we're going to go ahead and replace the rear bumper and tire carrier for this Jeep JK. We're going to go ahead and remove the spare tire and remove the factory tire mount. First we're going to use a 3/4 inch socket and go ahead and break the lug nuts loose and take the 3 lug nuts off and remove the factory tire. Now that we've removed the lug nuts, we'll go ahead and remove the tire. Now that we've removed your rear tire, what we're going to do is show you how to disconnect the electrical to your third brake light. Go ahead and open up the rear tailgate, and there's 4 screws on the back side, and these are a TORX head T20. Go ahead and remove the 4 screws, which will allow you to access to the electrical for the third brake light. Once you've removed the panel, go ahead and unclip the wires. This will allow you to not have to trim the wires until you know the desired length that we need to splice into our third brake light or LED tail lights. Now we're going to go ahead and use a 13mm and remove the 8 bolts that hold the factory tire carrier in place off your tailgate. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the rear bumper. Now this is going to be done through the wheel well. You're going to need a 16mm socket. We're going to go ahead and remove the bracket from the side of the frame. And then we're going to go ahead and remove the bracket off the end of the bumper. There's 4 bolts on each side. This will make it a little easier for removal. Go ahead and save the hardware where it mounts to the side of the frame, as we're going to reuse these 2 bolts. Go ahead and remove this bracket. Now go ahead and repeat the steps on the passenger side of the vehicle by removing the 4 bolts. Now go ahead and lay down on the ground, take a 16mm end wrench, and there's 2 bolts, one here and one here, that hold the rest of the rear bumper on. The reason I had you remove this bolt is so you can swing this bracket out of the way so you can get to this upper bolt, also using a 16mm wrench to remove it. Now that you remove the brackets on each side, you'll find that the bumper's really loose. So we'll go ahead and remove it now. Now, if you have a factory trailer hitch, which is mounted here in these 4 bolt holes, go ahead and remove it. That's going to be done with an 18mm wrench, and you're going to remove the bolts, next to the muffler. This will drop the trailer hitch out of the way. The other thing we want to do is remove the factory tow hooks. To remove the tow hook, you're going to remove the 2 bolt hairs on the side and go ahead and remove this lower one here also. This will allow for this tow hook to drop out of the way. Now, don't forget to take the inner piece out of the frame also. Now we're going to go ahead and get the rock hard 4x4 rear bumper lower section ready for installation. And we're going to roll this backwards a little bit, and I want to show you a couple things that I want you to do. When we mount the bumper onto the rear of the vehicle, we're going to locate the mounting holes now. These 2 holes here, okay, are going to go through the rear cross member of your vehicle, right where the factory trailer hitch mounts. Now, over to the side, there's going to be another plate here. This plate is threaded. And then these are your factory holes that go right into the wheel well. So what I want you to do is I want you to take the gold bolts, and I want you to run these in and out of this area with a, you can either use a 16 millimeter end wrench, because you've already used that. And then we're going to take these 1/2-inch bolts here. They're going to go from the back side here, and they're going to thread into these plates. And I want you to take and run those bolts in and out, because as you've seen, our bumper is powder coated. Powder coating gets in the threads. This will make it easier if you run those bolts in and out. It kind of cleans that powder coating out of there, and it'll make it easier for you to install. Now what we're going to do, now that we've cleaned the holes on the threads, we're going to go ahead and install the rear bumper on the back of the Jeep. What I normally do is lift it right here in the center, and go ahead and lift it up and place it on the rear frame. At this point, we'll crawl underneath and install our bolts. Now that we've separated the hardware that we're going to use to install the rear bumper, these are our factory ones, and these are going to go back in the wheel well into the forward 2 bolt holes on each side. These bolts here are going to go back in the corner, the ones that we tapped out, and these 2 are going to go right through where the factory trailer hitch mounted with the nut and, with the lock and washer, and the locks will go on these bolts in the corners. So first of all, what we want to install is we want to install the center 2. Okay, this is going to be done by putting the lock washer on, and then the flat washer, and we're going to install these into the rear frame through where the trailer hitch mounted into those 2 embosses that we've welded on the inside of that bumper. So let's go ahead and do those now. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and take a factory bolt, and these are going to install right in the end of the side of the frame here into the bumper. Next, take the 1/2-inch bolt and install it into the back corner here. Take a 3/4 inch end wrench and tighten down. Now that we've installed the lower section of the rear bumper and have it all tight, the 3 bolts on each side, the 2 in the center, go ahead and remove the red cap that the swing slides over. In the kit, hardware kit, you're going to end up with 6 shims that come in the hardware kit. We're going to start off with 4 of them, which is kind of the standard of what we're going to end up using. Most people that are running either a 35-inch tire or a 37-inch tire are probably going to have 4 shims in here. Sometimes if you're running a stock tire, and the racks, the rock rack and the can mounts, you'll end up with 4 or 5. We're going to start off with 4 on this particular build, and that's a normal place where most people are going to start off. Go ahead and put the 4 shims on and 1 thick spacer. This spacer is designed to go up in the grease seal, so it's a machined surface. The other thing is make sure you have no rust or paint on the surface of the shaft. If you do, take a little emery cloth or a little sandpaper and go ahead and clean that up now. Now I want to talk a little bit about how this hub system works. There's a bearing inside here with a cone, which is also called a race. And those are tapered bearings. And then you have the grease seal on the upper side here. This is the same on the bottom. These thick spacers go down in this grease seal so that there's pressure from this spacer when the nut is tightened and when it's on the bottom to push onto the bearing. If without this spacer, you would be just pushing pressure onto the grease seal. So we're going to go ahead and set this rear swing assembly over the shaft, and we're going to make sure this lower spacer goes inside this grease seal on the bottom. Okay? If you've noticed, we went ahead and it's went all the way up in here into the seal. Now, we're going to take the upper shim, and we're going to place it over, and kind of lift a little bit on the swing to center it, and we're going to push that inside the grease seal. Now, we will also take the extra shims that we had in our hardware kit, and place those on top. Okay? Next, we're going to go ahead and lightly put the aluminum nut on the top. Now, it's a good thing sometimes to put a little grease on that threads so that it doesn't gall. This Rockhart 4x4 machined aluminum nut has a lip on here to help keep the moisture from getting inside your hub assembly. Go ahead and put a little grease on the threads or WD-40 oil or anything like that to help lubricate it, and go ahead and spin this down in place. Now, this nut is designed so you can put a crescent on here and tighten it down. You don't want to over tighten it, but you do want to go ahead and snug it up in place. Next thing we're going to install is this grease arc fitting. This is going to screw right into the threads of this hub. Now, we're not necessarily going to fill this full of grease yet. It is going to be the final thing once our tire carrier is completely installed. And the reason that is, it's a little cleaner if we have to take this back apart to change the number of shims on the lower section here. The number of shims adjusts the height of this hub, okay? And the nice thing about that is if you're running a stock size tire now, or if you end up with a 38-inch tire or even larger sometimes, our tire carrier is adjustable so that you're not repurchasing another setup. Now we're going to talk a little bit about assembling the latch here. First of all, you need to assemble the handle to the latch. This is going to be done by bolting the handle on the inside of the bracket for the latch, taking the Allen-headed screw, and we want to put the Allen-headed screw this way with the nuts on them. Okay? And the reason that is when this handle assembly is inside your latch, we don't want the nut rubbing up against the inside of your tube. So go ahead and install the Allen screws with the nuts, the locking nuts, onto your handle, and go ahead and tighten those down. Next we'll install this in here. Let me tell you a little bit about how this works. This is our nut plate. The latch is going to go on the bottom side of this, but the nut plate has to go inside the swing. You'll notice that the bolt pattern of the nut plate matches up to the 3 bolts in the latch, and so it goes like this. It'll also match up to the 3 holes that are drilled in the bottom of the swing. So we're going to go ahead and slide this nut plate inside, okay? Line it up with the holes. Now we're going to go ahead and line up the latch in the assembly here. Take the 3 bolts, install them through the bottom of the latch, up through the tube, and into the nut plate. Okay? You're going to do that with all 3. Now that we've went ahead and started all 3 of the bolts into the bottom of the latch, we're going to take a 1/2 inch, or you can use a 13mm wrench, and just tighten these bolts down. Now, we don't want you to over tighten them, and make sure that you don't use an impact wrench while doing this. Some people that will use an impact wrench can actually squish our latch. We don't want the latch to bind up because you over tightened it, but you want it fairly tight, but don't bend the latch. Now we're going to go ahead and make sure the latch assembly is working correctly before we put the end cap in. Go ahead and push on the latch. There's the first safety latch, and there it's fully latched. Release the handle. Looks like everything's working great. Now we're going to go ahead and install the end cap in the inside of the tube. Now, something to check is make sure that there's no lip here that'll keep it from going in. You're going to slide this over the handle, and you're actually going to tap that in with a hammer, rubber mallet, or even sometimes put a board on it and tap it in place. Sometimes we all get a little anxious when we're installing our rear bumper. I forgot to put the striker on before we installed it. Now, it can be done afterwards. What the striker is the gold piece right here in the top of the bumper that the latch connects to. Now, if you need to install it afterwards, you can reach up on the back side here above the rear cross member and install the nut. The nut has a welded tab to it, so you don't have to put a wrench on it to take it loose or to tighten it. Go ahead and tighten down your striker, but don't over tighten it. We want to leave it somewhat a little loose as we're going to adjust it and center it into our latch next. There's a tag on the bumper when you receive it. We're going to go ahead and remove that tag, and that tag says bolt spacer rubber bumper reinstall when finished after adjustment. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove this here, so it's going to allow it so we can go ahead and adjust our striker. That can be done with a 1/2 inch or a 13mm socket. Okay, once you've removed that, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we have our striker, so it will move in here. We're going to go ahead and swing the swing over and latch it. This will center our striker in the swing before we over tighten this. Now we're going to go ahead and swing the carrier closed so that the striker realigns in the latch. Once we've done that, it'll move our striker over in place. Now we're going to go ahead and lightly unlatch it, open it, and tighten our striker down inside the bumper. Okay, we're going to use a T47, that's a TORX head socket, and we're going to go ahead and tighten our striker down in our bumper. Now, after you've driven for, a few years on yours, you might want to re-snug this if you ever need it to. But we've went ahead and tightened it down. It's nice because we've welded a tab onto the nut on the bottom side, so you're not having to hold it from below. You're just going to go ahead and tighten it down on top. Go ahead and re-shut the swing. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and use our 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter socket and reinstall our rubber bumper here. The reason we took this off is so that we made sure that the swing went all the way closed into the striker. Now, with the rubber bumper in place, as we close the swing, it's going to squish into this rubber bumper. This helps eliminate rattling. I want to talk to you a little bit about a couple things here. This hard plastic block is here designed to support the weight of the carrier once it's closed. Now, without a tire on there or the racks, it's just slightly above it. Okay? Now, when we have the weight of it on there, we want this to close. We want it to jump up on here, not maybe quite 1/8 of an inch, but at least 1/16 of an inch, so that the weight is supported over here when you're traveling down the road. We got it squished into rubber here on the backside good. Our latches go into the second stage of the latch, and we're right above it now. So now once we install our tire carrier, the upper section, along with the tire and the racks, our shimming is going to be about correct. Now, if this is, once you've put the weight of the tire and the racks and stuff on it, if this is way down and you have to lift it when you close it, we don't necessarily want this. I want you to take a shim off the top of the post and put it down below. That will raise this slightly and make it so that you got the perfect between 1/16 and 1/8 of an inch here. Now I want to talk about the adjustability of your rock hard 4x4 rear bumper and tire carrier. Now, we have two plates here, and these plates are designed so that they go on top of one another and they have a lot of mounting holes. Now, don't worry about it. It's pretty simple. What you're going to do is you're going to mount this section inside the back of your tire carrier at a certain height. Now, depending on the height of the size of tire that you're running, and if you want it lower or higher, it's personal preference, okay? One thing you do need to keep in mind is you want to have enough clearance so you don't get in the way of your receiver if you're going to be towing. Most of the time, I find that if you're running a 38 or 40-inch tire, you're going to put it all the way to the top. If you're running a 35, you're going to put it about 2 bolt holes down. If you're running a stock tire, you can put it into the 4th hole. There's plenty of adjustment to go up and down. Sometimes it's a looks thing, sometimes it's a personal preference thing. Now you're going to go ahead and put a flat washer on the bolt. You're going to put a bolt from the front side going backwards. Go ahead and install the lock washer and the nut. Go ahead and repeat this on all 4 bolts. Now we're going to go ahead and use an 11/16 and a 5/8 end wrench, and we're going to go ahead and tighten these 4 bolts down in place. Before you go ahead and mount this onto your Jeep, I want you to do something. Now I want you to put the stud in the appropriate hole that you're needing for the top, and that'll either be here or here depending on the bolt pattern as far as for the one bolt, and then the others will be here or here depending on the bolt pattern of your wheel. If you have aftermarket axles, sometimes this changes. It changes between other Jeeps also. So what I want you to do is actually go ahead and put this in your wheel now of your spare so that you line up the appropriate holes. It'll make it easier for you once it's on the vehicle. Now that we've figured out the holes of which the studs are going to go through, we're going to go ahead and mount this onto the triangular plate here. This will allow us to hold it in place while we pull the studs in. Now, this is adjustable in and out. Depending on the offset of your wheel will determine the location of where you put this. You're going to put the bolts through both plates with the nuts on the inside. We'll use a 5/8 and 11/16 to go ahead and tighten these down. Now that we've bolted the adapter part to the tire carrier and figured out which lug pattern is right for our Jeep JK, we're going to go ahead and pull the studs in. Now, one thing I want to touch bases on, some people have seen the angle on here and wondered why. The reason that is so that we can button the tire as close to the vehicle as we can, but also have enough clearance for your high lift jack when it's mounted here. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and pull the studs in. If you look at the stud itself, there's splines on it here, and they're a normal standard 092 stud, which is a Dorman stud. You're going to put this in. Now, we want to put a spacer on here, and then like a lug nut, or you can use a washer or whatever. You're going to put that on there, and then we're going to use a ratchet. We're going to go ahead and tighten that down, and that will pull that stud back into place. You don't want to use an air wrench on here, as you can put too much pressure on it. Go ahead and pull the stud in place. Okay, as you can see, we're going to go ahead and pull that stud so it's up tight, tighten it down, and go ahead and release the lug nut. Repeat this step on the other two remaining studs. Now we're going to pull in the last and final of the 3 studs. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the factory 2 tailgate bolts, and we're going to reinstall our bracket here for a rubber stop. We're going to do that with the bolts that are provided in the hardware kit using a 13 millimeter or 1/2 inch socket. If you look here, you'll see the distance between the tailgate, the bar that we put on, and the tire carrier. Now, this distance varies on your Jeep, not on the Rockhard 4x4 tire carrier. And the reason that is the vehicle body is mounted on rubber where it meets the frame. Okay? And that can be changed almost up to 1 inch in difference. Okay? So, and this will also move over time, over years, when you're out flexing the vehicle going through obstacles. So, sometimes you want to use the larger one, sometimes you want to use the smaller one. We want it to squish into the rubber about a good 1/8 of an inch. In this particular situation, the bigger one is going to be a little thick, but I think it's going to work out well. We're going to go ahead and mount that. Now, you can mount that either to the tailgate bar with the self-tapping screw that's provided, or you can mount it to your tire carrier A-frame. I prefer to mount it to the tire carrier A-frame, as it gives it a flatter surface on here for the rubber. Now, as I said a few minutes ago, you can use either the larger or the smaller rubber, depending on the distance between your body and the carrier. We went ahead and bolted this together with a button head Allen, and we're going to go ahead and close the tire carrier and see how solid it is. Okay? Now, the rubber is going to make contact with the bar, and it's going to latch into here and squish into this rubber here. So, that's solid. Every Rockhard 4x4 tire carrier has a high lift jack mount integrated into it. Now, we've done that with a couple things. We've made a post on this side that is solid, but we've made this side adjustable in width. The reason that is some of these different high lift jack or farm jacks have a different notch system. So there's different spread, and so we've made it adjustable so that you can adjust it to the particular jack that you own. Now, another thing is you're going to see these set screwed collars, and they take an 1/8 inch Allen wrench, and the reason those are on there is so that when the jack is on there, we don't want it rubbing up against our tire carrier, creating a rattle noise or anything like that. So you're going to set the collar so that the high lift jack is just right close to it, or in this case we've installed a urethane jack isolator, and that helps keep the jack handle from touching and rattling. And we're going to put that isolator right up against here on this side. We're going to go ahead and make sure that this collar holds the jack away from the tire carrier. You'll also find that there's an area here for a paddle lock in case you want to lock it in place. You'll also find here an area for an antenna. Now, to install the jack, we've raised it up, and on most 48-inch jacks, which is what most people use on the Rockhard 4x4 tire carrier, I normally put the handle about equal with the top of the jack. Makes it easy, sets the spacing correct. We're going to go ahead and lift that up in place. Put that on. Figure out where our collars are. Once they're tightened down, next we're going to go ahead and take the wing nuts and put them in place here and tighten them in place. Now, another thing is, you can, if you really want to get good and technical with your installation, you can set your tire depth so that the tire is right up against here when it's installed. Also makes it secure so nobody's going to steer your jack unless they were to take your tire off, and you can use locking lug nuts on there also. So you can lock it here with a paddle lock or up above. Now that we've installed our high lift jack, bolted everything down solid, installed the studs, have everything ready to go, got our rubber isolators in place, we're going to go ahead and install the rear tire. Now we're going to go ahead and tighten the rear lugs down on the tire and finish the installation. Something that's designed into your new rock hard 4x4 bumper is either a 7-way, a 4-way, or a block-off plate if you're going to be looking to do some towing. This is for your electrical. Now the factory Chrysler plug is designed to clip right in here, and then you'll put that on. Or if you're looking to block it off, or if you're looking to run a 7-way, the options are all in your rock hard 4x4 bumper. Now that we've loaded up your tire carrier with all the components on it and added all the weight to it, we want to check our adjustment. We want this easy to shut without having to lift hard. Now, if you notice when we close this, how it jumps up on here, not quite 1/8 of an inch, but about 1/16. This is exactly what we're looking for. So that when you close this with a little bit of force, it jumps up right on the hard plastic block and latches in place. Now, we're going to talk a second about going to the second stage of the latch, because we want you to make sure that it's always under the second stage of the latch, so you never have to worry about it ever coming open. This latch has a 2-stage, just like the car door. There's the first stage, and there's the second stage. You want to make sure whenever you're closing this tire carrier, it goes to the second stage. This will ensure that it will never ever come open on its own. The only reason it would is if you didn't get it closed and it's on the first stage. It is a safety stage, but we want to make sure if you get it close to the second stage and it's up against the rubbers, this carrier will not come open. Now we're going to talk a little bit about tail lights. This is an option for our third tail light, and it's a simple light with a bulb. And now there's 2 wires in it. One is a power wire and one is a ground wire. The black wire is your power, the white wire is your ground. Now, what we're going to do is, this comes with 2 self-tapping screws. That goes here. So we're going to route the wires through the center of the tire carrier and mount it with the self-tapping screws. When you install this, you want to put the ground wire on this one next to this brass piece inside. Use a 1/4 inch socket. Now, we're going to go ahead and tighten those down. Now that we've installed the rock hard 4x4 third taillight, we're going to talk a little bit about the wiring. And your factory wiring comes out of your door. What we're going to do is we're going to use a test light to figure out which side is positive and which side is negative. Next, use a test light, and you're actually going to figure out which side is the power and which side is the negative. And that you'll determine between your white and black wire. Now, one thing on Jeeps is I have found that these wires will be reversed. So we always recommend using a test light, and then you'll go ahead and hook these up. Remember, the white wire on the rock hard 4x4 light is ground, and the black is power. A lot of customers will actually take their factory wiring off of their JK and run it through the tailgate and bring it out in this corner. Because of the hinge here is in this corner, you're going to want to route the rock hard 4x4 wires down the post and over to this area. That way they're not being stretched when you open or close your tire carrier. Then you're going to connect the two together using the butt connectors.